So let's say you have a legal problem in Yemen. Where do you even start? Which court do you go to? It can feel like you're trying to find your way through a tangled city with no map. Well, today we're giving you that map. We're going to break down Yemen's rules on what's called judicial jurisdiction. You know that feeling, right? You're staring at a huge, complicated system. Could be anything. Taxes, regulations, and you just feel totally lost. Like you've been dropped in the middle of a maze and have no idea which way to turn. That is exactly what it can feel like trying to figure out a country's legal system. Every corner you turn, there's another complex rule or procedure. It's overwhelming. But what if you had a guide, a map, to show you the way? Well, that's pretty much what judicial jurisdiction is. It's the law's official map, the thing that tells you exactly which court is the right one for your case. So in this explainer, we're going to walk through that map together, hitting 5 key checkpoints in Yemeni law.
All right, our first checkpoint is a big one, the international question. Before we get into any of the local details, we have to ask a fundamental question. Do Yemeni courts even have the power to hear this case? Especially if foreigners or property outside of Yemen are involved. Let's start with the basics. If you're suing a Yemeni citizen, the answer is pretty simple. The case belongs in a Yemeni court. And this is true even if that person is living abroad. Now, there is one major exception, and it's a logical one: real estate. If the whole dispute is about a piece of land or house that's physically outside of Yemen, Yemeni courts can't touch it. Makes sense, right? A court in Yemen can't exactly enforce a ruling on a house in London.
Okay, so what about suing a foreigner? If they have an official residence in Yemen, the rule is pretty much the same as for a citizen. Easy enough. But here's where it gets interesting. What if the foreigner you need to sue doesn't live in Yemen at all? Can a Yemeni court still step in? The answer is yes, you can, but only if the case has a really strong tie to Yemen. For example, if the lawsuit is about property that's in Yemen or a business deal that was signed or supposed to happen there. It also applies to things like bankruptcies declared in Yemen or family support claims for relatives living there. Basically, for a Yemeni court to get involved with a non-resident foreigner, the heart of the matter has to be rooted in Yemen. So we've passed checkpoint 1. We know a Yemeni court can hear the case. Now we get to our second checkpoint, and it's all about money, the value of the case. And believe me, this isn't just a number. It determines a really fundamental right. This is so important because the value actually determines whether or not you can appeal a decision you don't agree with. Take a look. For a standard civil case, it has to be worth more than 200,000 Yemeni riyals to get an appeal. For bigger commercial cases, the bar is higher, 500,000 riyals. But notice how low the numbers are for family support. This is to make sure those crucial cases are handled quickly. What this system does is make the first court's decision final for smaller claims, probably to keep things moving efficiently. And get this, here's the real kicker. The court's first decision on what the case is actually worth, you can't appeal that. That initial valuation is final. So that one decision right at the start is incredibly powerful. It basically locks in the path for the rest of the case. All right, we're on to our third checkpoint. Our map is now pointing us to the next big question. What type of court do we go to? This is all about finding your place in Yemen's judicial hierarchy. The easiest way to think about it is like a ladder. On the very first rung, you've got the primary courts. This is where almost every single case gets its start. Doesn't matter what it's about or how much it's worth. If you lose there and your case value is high enough to be appealed, you climb to the next rung, the courts of appeal. Their job is to review what the primary court decided. And right at the top of the ladder is the Supreme Court. They are the final word, and they focus on making sure the law itself was applied correctly. Okay, we're getting close to our destination. We know our case belongs in a Yemeni primary court. But where exactly? Which city? Which district? That brings us to our fourth checkpoint, finding the right location. The main rule is actually really simple. You go to them. You file the lawsuit in the court district where the defendant, the person you're suing, lives. But of course, there are some common sense exceptions. For real estate, you file where the property is. For commercial disputes or family support payments, the person filing the case, the plaintiff, often gets a choice. You can file where the defendant lives, Or you can file where the important event happened, like where a deal was signed. It's a nice bit of built-in flexibility.
So what happens when you're following this map and you just hit a dead end? You need to sue someone, but they have no known home, no known address anywhere in Yemen. What do you do then? Where does the map tell you to go?
The law has a clear fallback plan. If none of the other rules apply, if there's just no other place to file, jurisdiction automatically goes to the courts in the capital city, Sana'a. It's a safety net that guarantees there's always a courthouse door you can knock on. And that brings us to our fifth and final checkpoint. So, you followed the map perfectly, you filed your case in the right court in the right city, but what if something happens that makes it impossible or even unsafe to actually hold the trial there? Well, the system has an answer for that, too. It's a process called a case transfer. This is just the official way to move an ongoing case from one court to another court at the same level. Say from the primary court in one city to the primary court in another. So why on earth would a case need to be moved? It boils down to two big reasons. The first is what's called legal impossibility. Maybe there just aren't enough judges available in that area to even hold a proper trial. The second reason is a bit more dramatic: public security. If there are legitimate fears that a trial in that specific location could cause riots or seriously disrupt public safety, the case can be moved. But this isn't a casual decision. It has to be requested, and the Supreme Court itself has to sign off on it. And so that leaves us with a final thought to chew on. We've just navigated a system that's full of clear, logical rules, a map designed to give everyone a predictable path. But we've also seen all these little exceptions and escape hatches, like case transfers, that are designed to bend those rules when fairness demands it. And it really makes you think, how does that constant tug-of-war between rigid structure and flexible justice ultimately define what a country's legal system really stands for? Thanks for joining us on The Explainer.